Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series, Questions and Answers, from the works of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Today, The Force and the Divine Force, Part 9, from Sri Aurobindo. The idea of helping others is a subtle form of the ego. It is only the divine force that can help. One can be its instrument, but you should first learn to be a fit and egoless instrument. The idea of helping others is a delusion of the ego. It is only when the mother commissions and gives her force that one can help, and even then, only within limits. All change must come from within, with the felt or the secret support of the divine power. It is only by one's own inner opening to that one can receive help, not by mental, vital, or physical contact with others. It is a relative and partial help, of course, but it is sometimes useful. A radical help can only come from within through the action of the divine force and the assent of the being. It must be said, of course, that it is not everyone that thinks he is helping who is really doing it. Also, if the help is accompanied with the exercising of an influence, that influence may be of a mixed character, and harm as well as help if the instrument is not pure. Also, one must be careful that no force comes through one except the right forces, those which are in harmony with the higher consciousness and help. If one does always in that spirit and with that care, then even if mistakes are made, it does not matter. The growing consciousness will set them right and progress towards a more perfect working. It is very good that the condition you speak of has settled itself. That is a great progress. As for the prayers, the fact of praying and the attitude it brings, especially unselfish prayer for others, itself opens you to the higher power, even if there is no corresponding result in the person prayed for. Nothing can be positively said about that, for the result must necessarily depend on the persons, whether they are open or receptive, or something in them can respond to any force the prayer brings down. As to force, let me point out a few elementary notions which you ignore. 1. The force is a divine force, so obviously it can apply itself in any direction. It can inspire a poet, set in motion the soldier, doctor, scientist, everybody. 2. The force is not a mental force. It is not bound to go out from the communicator with every detail mentally arranged, precise in its place, and communicate it mentally to the recipient. It can go out as a global force, containing in itself the thing to be done, but working out the details in the recipient and the action as the action progresses. It is not necessary for the communicant to accompany mentally the force, plant himself mentally in the mind of the recipient, and work out mentally there the details. He can send the force or put on the force, leave it to do its work, and attend himself to other matters. In the world, most things are worked out by such a global force, containing the results in itself, but involved, concealed, and working them out in a subsequent operation. The seed contains the whole potentiality of the tree. The gene contains the potentiality of the living form that it initiates, etc., etc. But if you examine the seed and gene ad infinitum, still you will not find there either the tree or the living being. All the same, the force has put out these potentialities there in a certain evolution which works itself out automatically. 3. In the case of a man acting as an instrument of the force, the action is more complicated, because consciously or unconsciously, the man must receive. Also, he must be able to work out what the force puts through him. He is a living, complex instrument, not a simple machine. So if he has responsiveness, capacity, etc., he can work out the force perfectly. If not, he does it imperfectly or frustrates it. That is why we speak of and insist on the perfectioning of the instrument. Otherwise, there would be no need of sadhana or anything else. Any fellow would do for any blessed work, and one would simply have to ram things into him and see them coming out into action. 4. The communicant need not be an all-round, many-sided encyclopedia in order to communicate the force for various purposes. If we want to help a lawyer to succeed in a case, we need not be perfect lawyers ourselves, knowing all the law, Roman, English, or Indian, and supply him with all his arguments, questions, etc., doing consciously and mentally through him his whole examinations, cross-examinations, and pleading. Such a process would be absurdly cumbrous, incompetent, and wasteful. The pre-arrangement of the eventual result and the capacity for making him work his instruments in the right way, and for arranging events also so as to aid towards the result, are put into the force when it goes to him. They are themselves inherent in its action, and the rest is a question of his own receptivity, experience, etc. Naturally, the best instrument even is imperfect, unless he is a perfected adhar, and mistakes may be committed, other suggestions accepted, etc., etc. But if the instrument is sufficiently open, the force can set the thing to rights, and the result still comes. In some or many cases, the force has to be renewed from time to time, or supported by fresh force. In some directions, particular details have to be consciously attended to by the communicant. All that depends on circumstances too multitudinous and variable to be reduced to rule. There are general lines in these matters, but no rules. The working of non-mental force has necessarily to be plastic, not rigid and tied to formulas. If you want to reduce things to patterns and formulas, you will necessarily fail to understand the workings of a spiritual, non-mental force. 5. All that I say here refers to spiritual force. I am not speaking of the supramental. 6. Also, please note that this is all about the working of force on or through people. It has nothing to do with intuition, which is quite another matter. Also, it does not preclude always and altogether a plenary and detailed inspiration from a communicant to a recipient. Such things happen, but it is not necessary to proceed in that way, nor below the supermind or supramentalized overmind can it be the ordinary process.